Welcome to another coding review, and this one is going to be a little bit different because I would like to show you more about the Combine framework, and we're going to have a look at the project of another tutorial on YouTube, which is from Let's Build That App. And this one is titled Advanced Swift Combine Framework Debounce Search Optimization. And there's a couple of things I would like to demonstrate. So first of all, it's a UIKit. But it's not, even if you're not interested in UIKit, I will show at the second part how to do it in SwiftUI, because part of what I want to do is I want to refactor the structure of this code, because right now he's using not the best pattern, which is actually massive ViewController. I wanted to demonstrate to use MVVM also for UIKit, because as soon as we have a nice view model, we can very easily use that for our SwiftUI code too. Especially since there our table view is going to be so much easier to handle. So this is the first one to re-architecture. Then there's a couple of bugs that I would like to talk about. And the big one is that what I see a lot is people don't go full in Combine. You can use a lot more Combine in this code. I want to show you why and what advantages it can bring you. And in this case, it's nice because you can see the functional code and the Combine code. So you directly see what's the advantages. Like, is it easier to read? Can you do some things for Combine that it's much harder to do for functional programming? I did link the other tutorial in the description box. And the good thing about this one is you can also get the source code, because this is where we want to start from. So in this project, we're going to work with Twitter, and we're going to just fetch a couple of tweets. And up here, you also have the possibility to search, which doesn't work right now because there's something not connected. I'm not really sure if it was me or if it was already there, but I will show you what's missing in a second. If you don't want to get the project from there, you can just redo the project with me. And I'm using the same frameworks as he did, and the most important one is this ST-Twitter. Don't really like it, but this is just where we start off. So in his file, he only has one ViewController where everything is in. So the UI elements and also the business logic and the model. So that's why I'm saying he's practicing massive ViewController here. And I did also take out the secret and the key here. If you want to do that, you have to go to Twitter and get your own. So just wanted to make sure that you really do that. And we're going to start by refactoring. So this is the first thing I want to take out. You shouldn't have the secret and the key in your ViewController or in your view, because apparently also for SwiftUI, people start to have the massive SwiftUI views design pattern. So I start by creating here another group, which is my model, and then a new group, which is my view model. So I'm just going to put in here these three things. So this is Swift file, and this is my Twitter API. So what I need to do in here is I need to use this ST-Twitter framework, and I already know that I'm going to use here a couple of Combine things, some convenient stuff we'll talk about in a minute. So this is the struct Twitter API. So, and I'm going to move stuff from here. Maybe I don't really need this right now. I'm moving these three out and in here. So then if we go back to our ViewController, let's have a look at what kind of code I want to take in my view model. So we have here in the view.load the search bar listener. This is a data stream from the text field, from the search text field, to start here this search. It is view related because we are trying to get a data stream for our view to our view model. So it will stay in here with a slight modification. Then the next thing is we have here this view setup, which is fine. It can stay in the ViewController. But we also have here this API verify credentials. That's definitely nothing to do. It should not be in the ViewController. So I cut this out. I mean, it's already complaining because it wants to have this API. So I need to have a view model Swift file. So this is a tweet view model. I'm only right now moving things that I don't want to have in the ViewController in the view model. Combine, import st Twitter. So this is a class because it's a view model. Tweet view model. So just going to comment this out and we discuss everything in a minute. Then if I go back to my ViewController and I go further, the next function call here is this search tweets. And you see here again this get tweets completion handler, this ad-hoc callback. Then the do catch block. So this is functional programming. There's no combine in here, but this part we are going to rewrite in combine. So you have quite a nice comparison. It's going to cut this all out, and I'm just copying this in my tweet view model and commenting this out because it's not working correctly yet. And I have to here in my setup listener uncomment this one line because we're not doing it directly here. Then we have these two model definitions in the ViewController. This really hurts. I'm going to create this two files now in my model group, which one for my tweet. Just going to move these two over there. Do I need anything else? No. This is already decodable. Why is this only decodable? So usually I wouldn't do it just decodable, but again, okay, for this project we only need it as decodable. But why not make it codable? You might at some point want to also send some tweets. Then I have here the declaration of my tweets, which I really don't want to have. I prefer to have my view model the owner of this data, because it's also the one that is going to fetch the data. So I'm going to move this one in my view model. Then now we have these two places where it's complaining because now my tweets are not in the ViewController anymore. And I have here my tweets in my view model as a property, but I prefer, because I need to also hook this up with my table view to update it, I need to have here a publisher, or I want to have a publisher with this one. And in this case, in UIKit, you shouldn't use @published, because this is going to give you only half the behavior. In this case, you can use a CurrentValueSubject, and then you have to, in this angular brackets, define what type they are. So in this case, the actual value is an array of tweets, then the error, which is never, and here's the CurrentValueSubject. You have to give it a current value for the initial value. So we start with an empty array of tweets. So now I'm going to show you how to use this in the ViewController. So I have here two places where I use my tweets. One when the table view wants to know how many cells it has in the table view. It's now asking the view model, which I actually didn't add a instance yet. So this is a let view model. This is a tweet view model. So now down here, when I need to give the amount of cells for the table view, I can ask my view model for the tweets. And this is the subject, and I want to know the value in this subject. So it's the value.count. And then down here, when I have to give the data for the cell, I have to not directly ask for the tweets, but my view model has now the tweets in the tweets subjects values at this index path.raw. If I run this, it's going to, there's no errors right now, but I did not take care of the data, fetching the data anymore. So the first thing, if you want to search for tweets for a certain term, we need to also store this term. And right now I didn't do that. I just have here this publisher that has the right value for the text in the text sphere, but I didn't put it anywhere. So in my tweet view model, I like to have now a storage place for this. So this is a var search text. And similar to this, because it's a value, there is always a value for the search term. It can be empty. I'm using again a current value subject, not a pass-through subject. And in this case, the type, what I'm sending in this data from this publisher, is a string. And again, no failure. So it's coming from my text field. And here I can give an initial value. So the one that I want to start searching with. And I did use here before as a search term, you see here search tweets with query Paul Hudson, because everybody likes Paul Hudson. So I'm just going to set this as the initial search term. And now we need to set up our data stream in the initializer of this view model. I have here these two blocks that did this before, but they are not combine friendly. I mean, they're not using combine at all, so we're going to make this now work with combine. And this thing that we start with is you have here this ad hoc callbacks with this completion. And in order to make this and we are going to wrap this in a future publisher, and we are going to write a function that creates us a publisher that does this. So I'm going to take these first. And we are going to do this in our Twitter API because anyway, this belongs together, this kind of publisher stuff. So this is so I'm just going to copy this code in here because we're going to very easy refactor this now. So this is a function that is just going to call this the same as this one here. We don't need to have any arguments to create this. And we are going to create a future publisher that returns us. So now you can decide what kind of data values you want to return and what kind of error. Since I already see here, callback here might give me an error. I'm going to say yes, this publisher might give an error. And I have here the username and the user ID that I can return. These are both strings, and I'm going to return them as a tuple, so this string, and they're actually optional. Not really sure if they're always optional or not. So now we have declared what we want to generate. So I want to have a future. Future has to have a promise. I'm going to close this after this ad hoc callback because now I can use it. So I uncomment this. I'm not doing this search term here. Just going to take this out so you see it. If I'm in my error block, I'm pretty sure I have an error. And I'm going to tell my promise that the result is a failure with this error. And yes, and the API is here already declared as this lazy var. If I am in my success block, I can tell my promise that here my result is a success and I'm returning the username and the user ID as a success. And actually, oops, I need to use this in the initializer here because of this API is equal to this. So now we did this with our first callback here for verify credentials. But I also want to do this for the second block because I really don't like this guard if and this catch blocks here. We can make this a lot nicer looking. Just going to copy this part in our Twitter API. So again, I'm creating here a function that creates me a publisher. So this is get search tweet with query. And in this case, I do want to have a input value with query. And this one is going to return me a AnyPublisher. So you see it, just trying to show you another one. So we are going to return here directly in our little data stream a array of tweets with an error. So we start with, you see here we again have a callback, which we do the same. We are going to wrap this in the future. So this is a future with a promise in. So I would use this part. And it has here this arrow completion handler again. Like this. So if the first error, it gives me here the types don't match. This is because we have to continuously work on this one. So the first thing is I need to give something back in my promise. So if I have an error, I'm going to return my error here. And if I have data, then I'm going to return here a success with this result. And now I have here my data stream any. And you see here he also did use a couple of options to transform this with a JSON decoder and this serialized decoder. So after my future publisher, I'm going to continue my data stream by transforming this with try map, because I want to use here this try question mark, and so it's not just a map, it's a try map. So in here, using this part, don't need this, and this is the value. So we are using a JSON serializer we are changing this array of any into a JSON file that I can now use with decode. And I want to have here a tweet.self because our tweets are decodable. And I'm just going to use here the same decoder with these properties. So var JSON decoder. This is a JSON decoder. Let decoder is a JSON decoder because I need to use this decoding strategy here. And then I am using here returning this decoder. So now I can use here my JSON decoder. Here you see, don't worry about these errors. This is just a because we didn't finish it with this AnyPublisher here. And this is not try question mark, it's just try because I have here try map. So now the newest error it gives me is that I have here this nested publisher, which doesn't work and I'm supposed to give here AnyPublisher. So right now I'm like, maybe I'm already at the right type, so we're going to use eraseToAnyPublisher. And this last error is just these optional, that I didn't handle my optionals. If you have a optional values in your stream and you just want to ignore it if it's null, you can use a compact map. So this is compact map, and I'm actually not going to do anything, I'm just going to call it. So we're not transforming it, you just can make basically this compact map unwraps optionally, it's like a guard statement with an optional. So now we have everything, I guess. I did not here catch my errors. So now I have everything. I have now here a publisher that I can give a query term to, and that returns me an array of tweets. I do have here errors. It depends if you want to have them in the stream. You can also do a catch here already. But if you compare this to this code here, where you have this error block at the end and this do catch inside, it's really hard to see what is done in which order. Whereas this reads really nicely. We first check our tweets API, what they give us, and then we decide, okay, we have now some data value. We're doing decoding here. So it's nicer to understand. Just going to take this part out because we don't need this anymore. This was just for me to know what I'm supposed to do. So now I have here these two futures and we can build our view model with this. Go back to our tweet view model. The first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to verify the credentials, and we wanted to use the future for this. So I want to have this from my Twitter API. It's Twitter API. And since we are going to create here a couple of subscriptions, I'm creating here a var subscript where I can store my subscriptions as a set of any cancelable. Now my initializer can build the data streams, and the first one was the verify credentials. So now I have here a stream, and we need to have a subscriber, at least one. So I use sync, and you see I have here a completion handle with this error that we might have. So this is a completion, and is an enum, so we can use switch completion case failure. Now we have here this error that I passed in the futures promise as a failure type. So we for now can print this error if you want. Ideally you would put it on the UI as a hint. So you could create here another publisher that you can hook up to a UI element. But since I don't have anything in this ViewController, I won't do that for now. So this is not exhausted. Quiz.finished. And if it's finished, then I know I'm fine. The same as if I received here a value. I'm just going to ignore this the values that I have here. And this is a success if you're here. And now we have a data stream which we need to store somewhere, otherwise it's not going to keep it after we leave the initializer. Not really sure if we have to do this verify credentials, but we're just going to do it. Then I need to create another data stream to fetch my tweets to replace this block. And I'm going to create another function where we set this up, set up fetch tweet. And I'm going to call this when we know we are successfully logged in, otherwise I'm going to get here more errors. So in here I'm going to call my setup tweets. This sync is going to capture self, which is my view model. So I need to use here self dot, which means that you have to use here unowned self, to otherwise you have a reference cycle. And just let me check. Yes, he actually used here a reference cycle. So you see here in the setup search listener, when he hooked up a publisher with this text field, and here in the sync he gets back this value, and he just uses self. So this is a reference cycle. So just make sure that with the sync you usually have to use weak self or unknown self. So if I go back to my view model, we have now our first stream. So I can go back to create my fetch tweets. And the one I want to, the publisher that gives me values to go through the stream is this CurrentValueSubject here, the search text. So I'm going to take my search text and we're going to create a publisher, subscribe to this. What we have to do now is we have to have a publisher in a publisher stream, a sub-publisher stream, because I need to go fetch my request. I want to use this other future publisher here that I created. This one gets search tweets, so we have a publisher in a publisher stream. And you have two possibilities. There's either flat map, but in this case, it's much better that we use SwitchToLatest. So first we're going to have here a map, and I have here my text in. So now I'm going to call my Twitter API to get search tweets with this text. And I have to use here self again and unowned self. So now I have here a stream in a stream. And in order to go back to only having values of the substream, we're using here SwitchToLatest. And now we have a array of tweets in there. And the other thing is I want to make sure I'm here handling my errors. So I'm just going to show you a possibility to use a catch block. So you get here the error. I'm not going to look at the error right now. But if you have a catch block, you need to replace the error with a value. And in this case, I just want to have an empty array. So we're using a just publisher, and we're going to use here an array of tweets. We are having an empty one. I just need to resolve this right now. So what I'm going to return here is a AnyPublisher that has an array of tweets and that does not fail, so never. And because it's an AnyPublisher, I have to again use eraseToAnyPublisher. If you don't have an array, but just a simple struct that you want to have here, you also can use a empty publisher and say complete immediately to. In this case, this one wouldn't pass any value, it just complete the stream. That would be another option. So now we have something in the stream, and now it's complaining you haven't used it. That's true. So I can use here a sync to receive my tweets. And what I want to do is I want to use this value and set it to my tweets here. So this is again self, so I have to use again here unowned self. Unowned self. So this is my tweets, don't send. So since I have a CurrentValueSubject, I have to use send. I'm sending my new tweets. And I'm still not done because I need to store this in my subscription. Okay, so now the last thing I want to do with the stream is I haven't taken advantage of the fact that I can decide how many values I want to pass here. So if you look at the ViewController, he used here this debounce in order to kick off this search, but I actually don't need to do this directly here. I'm going to use this debounce in my tweet view model to decide for my search text field when there's a new value, how much values do I want to pass. So in this case, he's like, if the user stops typing for half a second, then I'm going to let one value pass. But you can also use here remove duplicates. So, and now that I already saw it, here I did not finish hooking this one up. In this sync, I actually need to tell my view model the search text field to send a new value, which is this string. And this is again a self. So this is again a big self. You see here again this optional values in this data stream. So you can use again a compact map. And we can also use here an optional. If there's a nil value here, then it's just not going to pass this value. And yes, this is actually, now you see the main reason why in the beginning I didn't see my search results, because I didn't keep this subscription in the beginning. So I need to also store the subscription. Oh, I don't have this in here. So this is my subscriptions. Any of type any cancelable. And for this to work, I need to also have import combine here. So now I have a set of any cancelable. Start with an empty one, and I can store my the subscription that I created here in the subscriptions set of any cancelables. So we are using here in our ViewController this view model. When the text field changes, we are changing the property in our view model, or we are having a new value in this subject. We have a data stream from this subject, from the search text field, that goes and fetches new tweets, and stores them in this CurrentValueSubject, these tweets. So now in our ViewController, we need to react to updates to it. Here in the view.load, I can also tell my view model tweets to create a subscription, and we're going to use here sync. In this case, I just want to be called, so I can say myself.tableView to reload the data, and I have to use here unknown self again. Self.store in subscriptions. So now we have the text field talks to the view model fetches, and we have another data stream back to our ViewController to update the ViewController. And before I do this, I just need to change my API key. So when I run this, I should be able to see. And yes, you see here this one print statement success, because I have here this verify credentials, and I go and fetch my tweets. So the table view does work. Unfortunately, it's not a scrolling, infinite scrolling, because I'm not refetching in the end of this table, of this list of 10 tweets. And I couldn't figure out how to use this st Twitter thingy. But the good thing about this, I could demonstrate how to, it's a good example for using here SwitchToLatest, because before, you see here this one function call that was there before, and every time you do that, you fetch another set of tweets, and they might come back, especially if I'm here searching. I might start this process for multiple of these, and they might come back in a different order. But if you have here the SwitchToLatest, whatever is fetched in between, if I update this, it's going to only keep the latest fetch substream. So I can make sure that whatever comes back is the newest one. So I wouldn't need to even check, which is quite nice. So you can try to search for Swift here, for example. I see a lot of people who where they have functions, and every time they call this function, they create a new data stream, because actually they're creating this part of the data stream with the Twitter API, with this fetch request. If you do this, you give up half of the combine, because in that moment you have separate data streams. Every time you call this, you have separate data streams where you don't know how many values you have. In this case, you cannot use this removeDuplicates debounce or the SwitchToLatest. So it's much nicer to have these data streams and data streams. But I understand because it's unusual to use CurrentValueSubjects. If you have, instead of this map and SwitchToLatest, a flat map, this is basically, instead of switching to the latest, you would keep all fetch requests. So that would be much more useful if we had here this infinite scroll behavior. I would send in the data stream, in the stream, to fetch me more values, which could create the sub fetches here. And then you have new values coming back, which you can just append to your array of tweets. So that would be an example for flat map. Get confused with all this map. So it's flat map or SwitchToLatest. And since we are here, I just wanted to show you also why I did not use for these tweets a ad-published. Okay, you don't need to do this. I'm just going to show you. Published var tweets, which is a empty array of tweets. So I'm uncommenting this, which is going to give me a lot of errors because you have to call ad-published differently than CurrentValueSubject. But the most important thing is that ad-published does add you in the background the CurrentValueSubject. So it's from the baseline, it's the same publisher. It just looks different in the way you use it. So how many errors? So the first one here in this, when we want to change the value of these tweets, because the tweets themselves are not the publisher anymore. So I can say self.tweet. This is like behaving like a normal one. Self.tweets is the tweets. So then we have another one, I think, in our ViewController, because here, when you want to create a subscription with this, from this property, now this tweet is the property, but I want to have, this is $tweets. So down here, when we have to tell the table view how many cells there are, this is not subject, so it's directly the tweets. And it's the same down here, when we have to give the value for this cell or for this index path. So the first thing you see is that you don't see anything. And it's not because you don't have data. The problem is that here our data stream, you expect, yeah, this is called when the tweets are changed. But these API, these ad-published creates you a publisher that sends the value in the will set of this property. Your data stream has the value before the actual value before the tweets. Your data stream, the publisher sends an update before the value itself changes, which means that you're trying to reload the table view before this tweets has a value. So if you here use Swift, you see now that we have some updates, but this is because I have the previous one. It's not the newest one. It's a bit difficult to see right now. There's probably examples where you can see this better, but that's why I wouldn't recommend to use it published with UIKit. It's made for SwiftUI. So I'm just going to undo this. And the next thing is I'm going to rework this into a SwiftUI project, because now I have everything separated. I have here my tweet model, my view models, and my model in an extra file, so I can just change a couple of smaller things and we can directly use this with SwiftUI. We are now going to continue by building the same project with SwiftUI. And I created a new project and I did install with CocoaPods these 3 frameworks again. Actually, I don't need to have this LBTA tools because this is for HTAG and just some stack, which we don't need with SwiftUI. This SB web image helps you to lazy load images in views. So that is still convenient. Okay, we start. If I just go. So from our old project, I want to have the view models and I want to have the models and the view models. So I'm just going to include them in the project. So we don't need to change anything in our Twitter API because this is very much related to Combine and the backend. So it's not, since UIKit and SwiftUI, they are more related to views. But in our view model, here I'm going to change a little bit because of the way I'm going to hook it up. So now I can use here this ad-published for my tweets. And I'm also doing the same for my search text because I can easier hook this up to a text field in SwiftUI. This is at published var. And we start also with Paul Hudson. Comment this out so you see both of them. And then down here, when I create a data stream for my search text, I need to use $, to get the publisher. I can go back to my set on the tweets. And in this case, we can actually use assign to, depending on, so you have assign to on. The problem with this one here, this on, if you use self, this is going to create you another memory cycle because it's assign to keeps a strong reference to this on, and that's why you shouldn't use self. For iOS 14, you have here this to. We can use here our tweets publisher. Just take this out. So this works. Otherwise, you can do the same here with the sync. And the good thing about the assign to is you don't need to keep the subscription. So your code looks a lot nicer and shorter. So this is it. I don't need to do anything else in here. This is another advantage of having a view model and nicely separating everything, because obviously this should not be related to our view. Not like previously with this massive ViewController problem. Okay, so now I have everything, but we need to show it. So in my content view here, you could also rename this to tweet list. But yeah, I'm not going to make this even longer. So since I have a class I want to use, I need to have something object, and I'm using here state object. Well, this is my tweet view model, and because it's a state object, I can create it here. So this is a tweet view model. And I forgot to make my view model conform to observable object. Then now my content view. I wanted to have the same as before, so we need to have a text field. Unfortunately, they don't have a search text field yet, so you need to have a little bit more yourself. Search. So this is the placeholder, which is search tweet. And this one we are going to hook to our tweet view model search text. So the $sign here is a binding. This is not a publisher. Then, although it uses publisher streams to get updates. So previously in UIKit we had to do we had to ourselves connect our UI text view to our data, but in this case it's automatically done for us. Just going to add here text field style, rounded, border text field style. You can also create a little button to cancel everything again if you want to. So now I want to have a list of all my tweets. This is not with children. The children is actually nice, but I don't want to have it. It is this one, the ID and raw content. So this is my tweet view model, the tweets. And I don't think it's identifiable yet. Yeah, we don't store anything here, but I can make it identifiable. And var ID is a string. Return text. So I assume that you shouldn't have tweets with the same text, hopefully. But I'm guessing there's something in the API that has a ID anyway that is probably better suited for this. I don't want to work more on the model. So on the content view, I don't need to have this ID here. And now I can use the content. So now I have here my tweet. Maybe display dot text. And run this. So it's not the most amazing UI, but it's pretty fast for this. So previously, which I still have here, we had a cell with an image of the user and then the username and the actual tweet. So I'm going to create here a tweet cell. So this is a new file. SwiftUI view. This is a tweet raw. And this has a tweet. Now we can just give here a tweet in the preview. Text lorem ipsum. This is a user Paul. So this is a h stack. So we want to have this image. And then on the right side we have the text, the tweets user's name in bold, and the text tweets text, and this was in foreground color gray, and maybe the alignment should be leading. Probably should not make this more complicated than it is. So now here I can use the image. I'm not going to do this because it's going to take a little bit longer than I want to, but you could load the image in here. So now I have my tweet raw. So in my content view, I can use now this tweet raw with this tweet, and maybe I should just add here padding. So now you see here our nice tweets, and if you change this to Swift, it's going to refetch them. This actually reminds me that right now, if I change this to an empty, it's going to fetch it. So we probably shouldn't do that. So in our tweet view model, when you're here in this setup tweet search, instead here you can decide if the text field is, if text.count is smaller than, if it's at least 3 letters, I'm going to do this. Else I'm just going to reset my array to n. So it's the same as this one, just publish an empty one. And again, I need to use the eraseToAnyPublisher and return. So it's basically not, if you could also have here a filter and not proceed, but if I have less letters, I want to make sure my UI updates. So, and in this case, it's updating and just resetting it to an empty array, an empty list of things here. So if I have just this, it's going to be empty. And now we'll start as soon as I have more than 3 letters. So in this case, you make sure that your array is always empty. So it's a nice little way of here deciding which publisher I want to use or where I want to get my data from. Do I just want to publish an empty array, or do I actually want to fetch something? So with this, I'm going to wrap this up. I know I did. It did get a little bit longer than I wanted, but I want to demonstrate how much more combine you can use and how much nicer it can be. Because now, in this case, for example, you have a clear path of what to do when, and what things happen after which one. So it's nicer to read. And obviously, my main concern for this review, for this coding refactoring, was to have a better architecture or a better structure. You can use MVVM, and you see it's also nice to use it for SwiftUI, which is expected, but it also works really nice for UIKit because of combine, of this easy to hook up with these data streams. Before, it's not so easy to update and call on each other, but right now you just need to create a subscription on this side or a subscription on this side and just get the data flow going. So I hope you enjoyed this and did get some information, some valuable information. Give this video a like if you want to see more of these. Let me know if you actually liked the kind of combine I used and what kind of combine tool you haven't seen before that you might actually want to use in the future too. If you want to see a lot more of combine, I also have a new course. You can find the link to this course in the description. I'm going to post more free stuff on YouTube too. So if you don't want to miss more combine stuff, subscribe to this channel. Until next time, happy coding!